Hello and welcome. My name is Melissa. I am the owner and artist here at the Top Drawer RVA located in Richmond, Virginia. I'm also a Dixie Belle brand ambassador, and today's painting journey involves this beautiful French provincial dresser. This beauty has been stored in my shed for honestly at least 1 year. I've been saving her for something special, and today's job just happens to be for a beautiful 13-year-old little girl. You might remember the vanity that I painted a couple months back. This is going to be the matching item to complete her bedroom set. You're getting a sneak peek version of what's inside my shed. This is my lovely husband. He helps me all the time to move all the heavy things that I cannot. Check out all the things that I have in waiting to be painted. So we have to drag these items into my house because, y'all, it's 100 degrees here in Richmond, Virginia. I'm not painting outside. Plus, I need to record every single step of the way so that I can share this painting journey with you. I paint in my dining room, right here in the front of my house. As always, I start every project by taking out the drawers, removing the hardware, and cleaning super duper well. For any of my cleaning jobs, I use White Lightning or Pristine Clean. I put it into a spray misting bottle filled with water, usually warm water, and give it a good scrub. You're then going to need to rinse before you begin. I also sanded down any of the areas where the scratches were quite deep before I began. So this big, beautiful solid wood dresser had a finish on it that is close to like a laminate finish. If you know French provincial furniture, sometimes you'll see this kind of yellowed finish on top of the wood. You can sand it and then paint it, but since I paint inside my home, I always just do a slight sand scuff, and if it's any shiny surface, I then prep it with Slick Stick. Slick Stick is my gripper for anything slick or shiny before I begin to paint. And the top of this piece is an actual piece of laminate. I don't know why it was such a popular thing to do. I mean, I get it. It takes the wear and tear beautifully, but I really wanted to paint that laminate. So using Slick Stick in the proper fashion, which is apply with a roller or a brush, wait 2 to 4 hours, apply your second coat, and then wait 24 hours before paint is totally essential before you're painting any plastic surface. So if you look closely at the drawers in the front of this piece, you could see it in the initial part of the video. There is a lot of missing wood veneer from the front 2 drawers. What I'm going to do is just prep them the same way that I always do, get that Slick Stick on, and then repair it after my Slick Stick has dried. I like to use a throwaway brush and a throwaway foam roller for this job because you should not be washing your Slick Stick down the drain. So after I've completed my job with Slick Stick, I just chuck it all in the bin and away it goes. So while I'm waiting for the 24 hours for that Slick Stick to dry, I came in with my Big Mama's butter and lubricated all the wood on wood joints to get them ready for gliding easily. The drawers are solid wood, but they are a little bit heavy, so that using that Big Mama's butter is just going to help them slide a little bit easier. Okay, so let's talk repair and what I had to do to fix up these drawers. Well, first of all, after the Slick Stick had dried, I removed any loose particles around the edges, making sure that if there's anything that needed to be glued down, was glued and clamped before I began to do this part. So what I'm going to do now is just apply your Dixie Belle mud. Dixie Belle mud is a great filler for any missing spots of veneer, any holes or scratches. It sands completely flat when it's done. So you're going to notice that I overfill this area, and that's important so that when I'm sanding it back, I can get it sanded back completely flat towards the edge. After you have applied your mud, if you wanted to use Boss to prime it again or make sure that it was going to be sealed properly, that is totally an option as well. So I'll wait for this mud to dry, sand it back, and if I need to, I will do that job one more time to ensure that it's flat. So what's the plan for this piece? Well, it's the Magnolia Garden transfer. If you remember the vanity that I did before, I'm basically going to mimic the same look onto this piece of furniture so that the 2 pieces in her room match well, even though they're not from the exact same set. Now we're finally ready for paint. Finally, the prep work on this piece took a while. What I needed to do to get it ready for painting was to apply one even coat of a paint color. Now you can choose whatever you like. I just used Sawmill Gravy, but applying one even coat to the entire piece and letting it dry thoroughly before I start to come in and ombre blend my colors, it's essential for that big brush. That Bestang brush is kind of stiff and pokey, so if your base coat isn't on there and dried, it's going to pull back, and I don't want to see that white slick stick underneath. So I just covered the entire surface that had any slick stick, even the edges around the sides and the top part of this piece, to prepare it for the ombre blend. My husband popped in and he helped me too. So let's talk a little bit about hardware for this piece. The original hardware itself is beautiful. It was painted at one point, so I gave it a really good scrape and cleaned it with white lightning. I'm gonna paint that original hardware in a nice beautiful gold and then get two knobs painted in the same color to match. The top of this piece is going to be just pure palmetto. This is going to allow it to match really well with the other vanity that I painted in a similar fashion. Pure palmetto is going to take a couple of coats over top of that white. You could always use Boss in gray to accelerate this process because you would end up using less coats of paint, but I just knew that 3 coats of palmetto were probably going to be necessary. So let's talk a little bit of repair work. The bottom of this vanity originally had a couple pieces of trim that had to be removed. They were loose and flaking and broken. So once I removed that, I sanded it back to flat. Now, as I looked at it further, I knew that I was going to have to cover it in a certain way, that sanding it back was not going to cut it. So I ended up using some leftover pieces of Woodubend trim. I love Woodubend because you can bend it and shape it with your heat gun, and I covered the damages on the bottom, easy peasy. So working in sections for the initial coat of my ombre blend is always a good idea because it kind of lets you visualize where the paint is going to live on your piece. I used burlap for like a touch of warmth. It has a more creamy value. I used French linen as my neutral blending and Sawmill Gravy as pretty much the entire base of this project. What you're going to see me do here is lay down my color pattern and then step back and see if I need to change anything. All right, let's talk transfers. So this Magnolia Garden transfer has the ability to be cut up and applied in a couple of different ways. I wanted to kind of drape the transfer down from the upper corners and then kind of mimic that look on the base. So using blue tape is going to allow me to cut up my pieces evenly and make sure I have enough for both sides. Dixie Belle bells and whistles transfers are really super easy to use. After you cut them up and decide on your placement, you just peel off that backing paper. That's the protective layer on your transfer, and then you apply it to your piece. You use the enclosed burnishing tool to get it to lay down flat onto your piece and release from that paper. They're really fun to layer and cut up and design, and I use them a lot. There are a ton of designs on the Dixie Belle paint page. If you look under bells and whistles, there's so many transfers to choose from, but I believe that this Magnolia Garden transfer is their most popular, #1 bestseller. And it's cute because if you look behind where I'm working right now, that's my own armoire that holds all of my staging items, and that Magnolia transfer is over there too. You can see it peeking out on the left-hand side. So when you're working with transfers over top of a drawer, I mean, you have the option to take your drawers out and work with them flat on the floor. I personally like to keep all of my drawers in and use a very sharp knife to cut the transfer where the drawers meet. This way, there's no real, disconnect when the transfers join. They actually sit where they're supposed to, vertically up on that surface. So just keep a sharp knife handy, cut that little bit, and then carry on with your piece. When you're finished applying your transfer, there's a couple of different ways that you can seal it. You can use your Best Dang Wax in clear, or you can use any one of the Dixie Belle clear coats. I sealed this entire piece with Best Dang Wax in clear because I'm going to be coming in with a little bit more brown wax to accent any details. I really wanted to highlight that original carving that's on the piece, so I used my gemstone mousse in Golden Gem. Now here's the ticket when you're using gemstone mousse. You need to stir it super duper well. It's not going to have the right pigment mix if you don't stir it very well before you use it. I also like to take it then and add my clear coat in gloss. This is me just putting a little bit of gloss in there. You know, it's almost like a 50-50 mix. Mix it up in the cup and then it's going to go on like a dream. By cutting your gemstone mousse with a little bit of that clear coat, you're ensuring that that water-based product is going to be super strong, and I'm not going to have to seal it again over top of my mousse after it's applied to the piece. So I hit up all the really beautiful details on this piece to accent in shiny gold, and then when I do my dark wax over top, it will dull it a little bit and really bring this piece together. So this sweet little girl actually wanted her initials on the front of this piece, and that little panel in the front is where I'm going to put them. So I used my Cricut Explore 3 to cut out her initials in a specific size that I measured, and then brought them into the piece to see what the design would work like.
Document.
So after using my Cricut, I applied the tape to get it to stick onto the front of the dresser easily, and I realized, hello, it's a little bit too small. So I did the same initials in just a bit of a bigger pattern so that it would fit squarely inside that little panel on the front. I then used my gemstone mousse to fill in that stencil, and her initials were then applied in gold to the front of the piece, and they looked really, really good. So the last step for this piece, we're almost done, is to add the Best Dang Wax in brown. The reason I used brown was to kind of mesh really well with the actual Magnolia Garden transfer. I feel like black might have been a little bit too harsh. So I came in with all the details and then wet it. I like to wet it really well so it kind of sits in the crevices and wipe it back. Since Dixie Belle wax is water-based, it's super easy to use and wipe back and get that beautiful aged effect. So after highlighting all of the corners in that beautiful Best-Dang wax in brown, I did touch some of the corners with gilding wax in gold, just to be sure. I opened up my drawers, touched up any edges, and she is all done. What a beautiful transformation to a super classic French provincial piece. I absolutely loved it. I also painted her the cutest little music box to match, and my job here is done. I'll see you next week.